Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the November 18th meeting of the Town of Brighton Planning Board. This is, I don't know, this is probably our 7th or so Zoom meeting. We're getting a little bit better at it every time. I am Bill Price. I'm the chair of the Planning Board. And I will, I'd like to just quickly introduce the other members of the board that are here tonight. Laura Civiletti, Pam Delaney, John Osowski, Jason Babcock Steiner, and Ramsey is with our staff. Jeff is with our staff. He's handling the technology, and our attorney is David Dollinger. Tonight, as we have in the past since June, we will have the applications on the screen, and then the applicant will make a presentation. The board will have a chance to ask any questions of the applicant, and then we will open it up to public questions and comments about that particular application. I will ask everybody that if you are interested in addressing an application, that you use the raise hand feature. And I know there's that feature on Zoom. And if you're on a different platform, I apologize. I don't know what that feature might look like on a different platform. But please, if all fails, just wave your arms frantically, and Ramsey and Jeff will try to catch you and let you in to make a comment on the application of interest to you. So Ramsey, will you please call the roll for tonight?
Osowski.
Here.
Babcock Steiner.
Here.
Delaney.
Here.
Civiletti.
Here.
Price.
Here.
Absent is member Fader.
Okay, thank you. There will be several public hearings tonight. Mr. Secretary, were these public hearings properly advertised?
Yes, they were properly advertised in the Brighton Pittsford Post on November 12th, 2020. We should also maybe do minutes before we go into the public hearing.
Okay. We do have minutes from our October meeting. Did everybody have a chance to review those, see them and review them?
Yes.
So, if so, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes with the corrections sent to Alexandra.
We also have minutes for September.
This is John. Let's do those separately because I was absent in October. So.
Okay.
All right, well, let's wrap up October. We do have a motion to approve from Laura. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Delaney. Seconds. Member
Right.
Price.
Aye.
Civiletti.
Aye.
Delaney.
Aye.
Babcock Steiner.
Aye.
Osowski abstains.
Yes.
All right. We did receive also September's meeting minutes. Received those. Thought we had approved those last month, but do we have a motion to approve September's meeting minutes?
I'll move that we approve September's meeting minutes.
Thank you, John. Jason, second. Yeah. Will
Member
you?
Price.
Aye.
Civiletti.
Aye.
Delaney.
Aye.
Babcock Steiner.
Aye.
Osowski.
Aye.
Approved.
All right, thank you. Okay, so let's get back to the public hearings and if they were properly advertised.
Yes, they were properly advertised in the Brighton Pittsford Post on November 12th, 2020.
Okay. And can we say that all of the applications for tonight have been posted to the town website.
Yes, they have.
Okay.
We do have a couple of applications that have been adjourned.
Please tell us which those are.
Application AP 0120, the application of John Greer for the application of 2171 West Henrietta Road has been postponed until the December 16th, 2020 meeting at the applicant's request. We have the application of S.E. Baker Company for Brighton Corners for 1900 Monroe Avenue is adjourned at the applicant's request until the December 16th meeting, 2020.
Okay.
Have both been adjourned.
Okay. Ramsey, could you please call our first application?
Yes, the application of Loyal Group REM owner for a demolition review and approval to raise a commercial building on property located at 1285 East Henrietta Road.
Okay. We have somebody here to represent the owner?
Raise your hand.
Good evening. This is Paul, the owner of Loyal Group REM.
Hello, Paul.
How are you?
Good, thank you. You tell us a bit about this?
Yeah, so it's a property we purchased roughly 2+ years ago, and we've been marketing it ever since. We had a couple different parties that toured the property. A lot of them can't make the property work or retrofit it. Other parties want a newer building built. We try to make it work with what we have, with making some renderings and doing with build-ons and additions, but just can't make it work.
And at this point, your proposal is to demolish, and has a restoration plan been submitted?
Yes, it has.
How are you
That's your-
handling the truck traffic coming in and out of the site? Because that's a tough little intersection there.
Can you please restate that?
How are you planning to handle the trucks coming in and out of the site during the demolition when you're removing the debris?
It's a small building. It's a small building. I mean, we plan about 4 truckloads coming out, 4 dump trucks coming out of there.
I thought you were proposing to restrict the hours of when they were coming and going.
Yeah, which we can do early in the morning.
Is it consistent with what you presented in the application?
Yes.
What will happen to the existing fuel tanks?
The fuel tanks were removed.
Have they been?
Yes.
And
It's
how
on
is how are you planning to restore the existing building pad?
We're gonna either mulch it or hydro seed. It matters on the condition, on the weather conditions.
Okay, so you might do both,
Most likely mulch, because
Yeah.
nothing will go on the frozen
and
ground.
then come back in the spring
Yes,
to seed it.
and seed it, correct.
And are you planning to change the grade at all?
No,
And will the site during demolition be fenced off?
no, it won't be.
How long do you think the demolition is going to take?
It should take less than a week. Within 2 days, we estimated we should have it done.
Is there a septic system on the site?
I don't remember.
Because if there is, it has to be shown on the plans and properly removed.
Okay.
I don't have any other questions.
Okay. Other board members have questions?
I do not.
John?
No.
Jason, thank you.
I'm all set.
Ann, thank you.
No, I'm good. This is John.
Okay. All right, at this point, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone in attendance tonight that wishes to address this application?
Raise your hand.
I don't see anybody.
I don't see anyone either, Bill.
Okay. All right, Paul, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, we'll move on. Ramsey, would you mind
Yes,
reading?
I got the next application is 11P0220. The application of the University of Rochester owner for site plan modification to install a new backup emergency generator on property located at 250 East River Road.
If I could just take a minute, I believe I need to recuse myself from this application.
Laura, could you pinch hit?
Sure.
Ready? Thank you.
Now, Ramsey, do I get on?
So
turn
is
my
there
video
anyone
off?
that, we'll find, is there anyone, Laura, we'll find, is there anyone that speaks for this application?
Yes, this is Nate Butzak with TY Lin.
Hi,
Hi,
Nate.
Nate.
Good evening, all. I am representing UVAR. I've worked with ME Engineering on this project. It is for the replacement of an existing emergency generator on site. The new generator will be roughly a 1250 kilowatt generator, which will replace the existing. It will be located just on the other side of the existing drive aisle, probably about 30 feet to the north. The existing fuel tank will remain on site. There will be a new concrete pad installed with bollards protecting the existing or the proposed generator. There will be some new asphalt paving to fix up the access driveways, some new lawn areas installed, and some new trees for screening along the north side of the generator. That's pretty much the project. It's pretty simple. So I don't know if you guys have any questions.
This is also diesel fueled.
Correct.
What is the decimal levels of the generator? Because you're proposing to enclose it with a level 2 enclosure, is that right?
Correct. Not 100% sure on the decibel levels. I can follow up with that information exactly. But it is my understanding it's going to be much quieter than the existing with the new enclosure and the new systems that are being installed with the generator. So
In the documentation that you provided to the town, if I could just pull that out for a second. I think you said it was going to be 73. It's the submittal data for the generator.
Yep.
There it says it's going to be 73 decimal levels at 23 feet. And you're going to do a level 2 enclosure.
correct.
Okay, thank you. Gotta get this cat out.
Hey, this is John. I'm curious, is there a reason why you didn't want to go to a natural gas generator instead of diesel fuel?
I believe the intent was the tank was existing and in place and in good shape, which was the reason for the generator being diesel fueled.
Okay. Is the new generator a lot bigger than the one that it's replacing?
Yeah, my understanding, it is roughly the existing was about, I believe, 800 kilowatts plus or minus. And the new one was installed for some future expansions for this building.
Okay,
Also includes new circuit breakers, et cetera, to kind of distribute the power a little bit easier and better.
What are the dimensions of the generator?
Generator is roughly, 1 second, can't read the screen. Generators roughly with the enclosure is roughly 11 feet wide by 36 feet long.
There's a wood frame shed that's going to be relocated. Do you know where that's going to be relocated to?
I do not. It was relocated already by the facilities at the LLE staff. I'm not sure. My understanding is they moved it to the back of the site or got rid of it altogether. I can follow up with that
Okay.
for you.
And how is the generator being screened from the abutting roadway?
It's being screened from the north, specifically along East River Road, with some new pine trees, which are going to be Norway spruce.
I don't have any other questions.
Do any members of the board have additional questions?
I'm good.
no,
I'm good,
I'm good.
thanks.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Would anyone care to address this application? If you could raise your hand so you can be called on.
I don't see anybody.
Okay, in that case, we will move on.
Thank you.
Ramsey, what's our next
The next
agenda?
application, Bill, is the application of the Baptist Temple owner and Clover Park Properties LLC contract vendee for a preliminary site plan approval to convert an existing church building into a high-end office space and to construct a two-story, 10,000 square foot addition on the property located at 1075 Clover Street.
Okay. Jerry or John, are you able to
Yes,
give us
I'm
some
in.
background?
Yes, I'm in. This is Jerry Goldman. I'm the attorney and agent for Clover Park Properties, LLC, who is the contract vendee of this property located on the southwest corner of Highland Avenue and Clover Street. There it is. If you look at the far left of the picture outside the shading, you will see John August's house. John is one of the principals of Clover Park Properties LLC. John has lived next to the Baptist Temple for many, many years and has had a tremendous amount of interest in its development and use over the course of the years. Started out exclusively as a church, and then as church use kind of waned, there are church-related uses that have gone into the site. Daycares, spirituality and wellness centers. There are other uses I think maybe in there. So unlike typical church uses, which very often are only utilizing the property on weekends and religious holidays, this property is busy pretty much all the time. I visited the property a few times, and during the day there are a number of cars that are there every time that I have been there. As Ramsey pointed out, the proposal for this property is to convert the existing building, which will have 31,000 square feet of office space on one and in some cases a second floor. That's the total square footage being used, and was also being proposed as a 5,000 square foot footprint additional located at the northwest corner of the building for a total of 10,000 additional square feet on the site. John has taken particular interest in the development of this property, and there have been prior applications for this property which haven't, or interest in the property, which haven't really come to fruition. John's been concerned with the stability of the property and trying to make sure that it's used in a way which one doesn't have a great deal of intensity, and two, in particular, preserves the lawn area, which is on the northeast corner of the property. I don't know how to point to anything, but it's the bottom right corner of the site. And as you can see, the site plan successfully addresses the goal of being able to keep that area, which really is a focal point for this neighborhood and this gateway for this part of the town of Brighton. When John first approached us and talked about coming in and doing this redevelopment, I talked to him about the fact that one of the most important things you can do is to go and meet with your neighbors and talk to the neighborhood. And in fact, John did that into the summer and into the early fall. He received enough positive input to move forward with this application process. And as the board knows, we were in front of the board, I believe in July, maybe it was August, but I think it was July of this year, with a concept plan and concept review. The town's process wants us to come in with a preliminary site plan application before going to the zoning board for any zoning board relief by nature of a use variance in this case, and a single area variance. With that introduction, what I'm going to do is to turn the presentation over to Matt Tomlinson to talk through the site plan, and then I will come back and summarize the process as we see it, the process going forward, and some of the interactions we've had with the neighbors and neighborhood. So with that, Matt.
Great, thanks, Jerry. Good evening, everyone. Matt Tomlinson from Marathon, as Jerry mentioned. We have prepared and submitted this preliminary package, which is for the most part consistent with the conceptual plan that we presented to this board and also to the Conservation Board, as Jerry mentioned a couple of months ago. We did request to be tabled after making our initial application, and then amended the package addressing some of the comments from staff that we received relative to the requirements for including 6,000 square feet of medical office space. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go along. In general, the goal of this plan is really to develop the parking in the fields and the improvements to the rear or south and west of the site where there's existing screening, where we back to rear yards, and as Jerry mentioned, maintaining the large park-like setting out at the front of the site, as well as the mature trees headed down Clover, which I'm going to get into the trees a little bit here shortly as well. But from an overall site plan standpoint, the parking in the front, the use of banked pervious pavements for overflow areas that we do not anticipate to be needed based on our anticipated demand, and maintenance of the existing building and entrance points, as well as the proposed addition located here on the east side towards the north. This is set approximately 105 feet back from Highland Avenue and is positioned in such a way that it provides additional screening to the parking area. This is an existing parking area currently, which is visible out to the street. So from that standpoint, I just wanted to point to the board that this is consistent. We have added some additional banked parking in the rear, which is back near the playground area that's utilized by the daycare currently. Appreciate the pointer. I'm doing that here, even though you can't see my mouse. But I wanted to touch base on a couple of things because, as Jerry mentioned, we have reached out to neighbors. We've heard some concerns from them. We've also received and read through comments that have been sent into the town from the neighbors. And we did have a meeting with the neighbors out here on the site a few weeks ago as well. Again, in endeavoring to put the developer's best foot forward and being as transparent as possible with the neighbors. I want to talk about the trees and tree removals, if I can briefly. We did submit and have a demo plan as part of the package, which it looks like you're scrolling to. The majority of the trees that are to be removed, or all of the trees, have been reviewed for condition by Heinrich Fisher, and also he sub-consulted with an arborist relative to condition, expected life consistency, or expectancy of some of the trees. And the trees that we are removing, for the most part, are none of the specimen or large trees, especially out to the perimeter. And I'll talk through that a little bit. Along Clover Street, there's several mature oak trees fronting the project. It is intended to leave the existing curb cuts where they are and maintain those mature trees. We did revise the layout going through the process to maintain the large 36-inch oak directly next to tree number 2, which is on the site there, and eliminated the small oak that's overshadowed by its largers and in poor condition, surrounded by pavement in number 1, and that's shown on the layout plan. But I'm going to step through some of these trees that we're proposing to remove because most of them are either invasive species, poor condition, pines that have not been maintained and are kind of past their life expectancy. So I'll step through those real quickly, and we did the same with the Conservation Board at the time in showing them. So one, as I mentioned, is a very small pin oak. It's in a island area that's surrounded by asphalt, and it's in poor condition. We're removing that in order to maintain the 36-inch oak, which is directly to the east in an existing island that we are making larger. I'm sorry, directly to the west, sorry, north's to the right. Directly opposite the door, you got it there. Number 2 is an American dogwood. Again, its roots are compromised by the asphalt, and it's in relatively poor condition and overshadowed by that large 36-inch oak. Number 3 is a honey locust. It's small. That was one of the trade-offs in the area for the new parking, in keeping that large 36-inch to the east of it, and is not in good condition and is not a very high quality tree when compared to some of the beeches and oaks that we have elsewhere on the site. 4, 5, 6, and 7 are all pines that are grouped through the development area. I did want to note, I don't believe we have a number, but there is a 14-inch cherry, which is a flowering tree that we were looking to keep, but ended up having to show for removal for some of the banked parking that some of the parking that we needed to create. It is an older cherry tree and will be replaced with a similar flowering tree as part of the planting plan. 8 is an overgrown cedar or arborvitae just on the west side. That's back near where we're proposing our dumpster. It leans over the pavement and is in very poor condition. Number 9 is another Colorado spruce. That tree is within the playground area, and I'll come back and speak about the daycare briefly. 9 and 10 are within the playground area and would not be removed unless and until the daycare relocates from the building. And again, I'm going to come back to that daycare discussion as we get into the traffic portion of this. 11 and 12 are the 2 largest mature trees that are proposed to be removed, and they are outside of the work area. And this was a recommendation from the landscape architect and arborist. These are two larger silver maples that have a lot of deadwood. They're both 28-inch. They grow close together and the branches are commingled, which impacts the health of them. They would have several years of life expectancy left. And if it was a major issue, those trees could be left. However, given the opportunity to clean those up now, remove the potential for root impact to the existing asphalt drive, and replant that area, which is a buffer to the neighbor immediately to the west, we thought that it was a very good opportunity to remove a tree that may not last all that long and get some plantings in that will grow to maturity all the sooner for being installed now. So we can come back to that if the board has questions there. And then relative to 13 and 14, both of those are calorie pears, which are invasive species, and immediately adjacent to the proposed building footprint would be impacted by that construction. And so those are proposed to be removed. 15 and 16 are a larger crabapple that is getting towards the end of its life, and a spruce tree that's out in the middle of the lawn and also not in the greatest of condition. And again, to replant some trees and more in a formal relationship to the proposed building and extend some of those trees out through that front yard that's being maintained along Highland, felt that it was a good opportunity to remove those as well. So with that, I just wanted to say that the mature trees out at the corner of Highland, the signature trees out there, for the most part, are beech, some large Japanese maple, horse chestnut, and oaks that are really beautiful trees. And again, the owner or the developer has every intention of maintaining those, getting them trimmed up, maintaining the health of those to ensure that this view or this setting of this building is maintained throughout the development and ownership of the property. With that, I'd like to talk about traffic a little bit. What we have submitted to the town for consideration is a preliminary plan set. And as Jerry mentioned, excuse me, we are working towards obtaining hopefully a use variance for the site. And as part of the town's requirements, we need to come in with this preliminary plan set so the planning board can weigh in on the proposal. And given the time frame that we're in with COVID and everything else, a full traffic study may be warranted or may be required by the town. And I know we've received several comments and questions relative to it. However, obtaining background information with the reduction in kids in school, reduction of folks in the office, reduced travel, we're in somewhat of a difficult spot, or were in, when we were putting the package together relative to potentially preparing a traffic study that wouldn't necessarily be reflective of what the built conditions will be of this proposal. And so what we have submitted is a trip gen letter. As Jerry mentioned and John has before, there are many varied uses within the existing building, including the daycare. And so this is an intention to provide the town with a consideration of what would be anticipated for traffic, full occupancy, full build out of that 10,000 square foot addition, as well as giving some background in comparison to existing traffic levels for uses within the buildings themselves. And we can get into the details of that trip gen letter, but I wanted to give some background to the town relative to what our thought process was in providing the documentation that we have. And with the understanding that as we go through this approval process, if our use variance request is successful, that we will provide the additional detail. We have received comments from the town engineer, which I believe was posted online. And I know that the board has several questions that were outlined in the posting for the agenda tonight. I'd like to take a couple of minutes and just run through those questions, as I know we'll have some further discussion on them. But if I touch on them now that they are all written out, I'd like to just read those out and then we can have further discussion as the board deems necessary. So there were several questions, including what are the proposed uses for the building? It's intended to be professional and medical office. We are proposing to have the daycare there for a transition period. John, correct me if I'm wrong, but the intention is for no occupation, or the developer has committed that he will not occupy the addition unless and until the daycare is relocated from the site. There's a concern or a question raised as to whether or not the daycare would be required to relocate immediately, and that is not the intention. We do not want to displace a daycare that services the Brighton residents. John, I don't know if you want to add on to that statement.
I don't know if I'm unmuted. I was trying to unmute. I don't know if I heard what just started, but yes, we in fact are committing that we will not occupy the addition while the daycare is on the premises. And we think that would allow, knowing 10,000 feet to come online would be done so the traffic wouldn't be handling both the daycare and the addition.
I certainly would want to see what the impact of the daycare would be with whatever you're proposing to do in the short term over the next 3 years.
Understood.
We need to see that. We need to see the worst case scenario. I think we might want to talk with the county and state if needed. They may have jurisdictional authority in the area just to figure out what is the best way to go about the traffic based on your plans for the immediate future and the long-term future.
Understood. Thank you, Ramsey. And so I bring that up not because we're trying to avoid having to analyze something. We fully, again, anticipate diving really hard into the details and working with town staff and this board in order to ensure that everyone is satisfied with the development and the traffic levels. I bring it up because I want to let the board know that we didn't just eliminate consideration of it, but in looking at it said, hey, it's not a long-term, so what are the long-term impacts here? In addition, there's, I'm sure, a question about the playground. How is that going to work if we build that parking, et cetera? And the intention again would be to have a transition period. We wouldn't necessarily need all the parking yet if the addition's not built, so that would allow for some overlap or synergy there in the development of this parcel.
Matt, one thing I do want to say about the parking and the playground, it does need to be figured out because the parking study did not include the daycare. So the daycare and what you're proposing, again, in the short term, needs to be analyzed to make sure we do have enough parking.
Understood. There's a question about
they need another variance. I don't know if you need a parking variance or not.
Yeah, we did take a quick look at that and we can provide those numbers to the board in our response to the written comments. Yes, the parking lot is intended to be lighting. We're proposing 16-foot high LED down lighting. It is a post top, but it's a LED flat fixture down into it at 16 foot in height. All of these are dimmable and controllable. It is not the intention to light this up all hours of the night, and we can get into some detail about when and whether or not lighting is reduced or turned off other than necessary for security, of course. The light poles have been pulled for the most part as far from properties on the west as possible. I did note a couple of questions relative to the intensities or the values. I believe that these are all shown at the highest intensity available. Again, they are all dimmable and controllable from a light level standpoint. The lighting legend does show a 4K color. Understand the standard of 3K and the final plans or revised plans will reflect that it will be the correct color for Town of Brighton standards.
Were these lights be on timers, Matt?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Ramsey?
Will the lights be on timers?
They can be, or yes, they will be or can be controlled to whatever satisfies the owner as well as the town relative to time constraint on that lighting, again, subject to building code and security.
Are they dark sky compliant?
I do not know the answer to that, Ramsey. I believe that they are. They're straight down lights, LED mounted on a horizontal housing above it, but I did not see on the sheet where it says it's dark sky compliant
Neither
or
did I,
certified.
so if you could look into it.
Will do. The Conservation Board raised the question, and I believe that the Planning Board did as well during the concept review relative to screening to the neighbors on the west. And there's a variety of fences, solid fencing along the entirety of the property lines to the west. The northmost neighbor has put in a very nice fence relatively recently. And again, we're proposing some additional plantings over in that area. And there is solid screening by fencing along the entirety of that west line. The Conservation Board raised a question, and I believe staff has as well, relative to, well, that's on other people's property and not necessarily screening provided by the developer. So what if somebody takes a fence down? And so I don't know that we are opposed to providing a solid fence along there. Providing a second fence a foot or 2 feet apart from another fence becomes somewhat of a maintenance issue and would seem somewhat redundant. So we're definitely open to the discussion. Don't necessarily have a great resolution on that issue or that request at this point. So I guess that's an open item that we look forward to discussing with the board. There's a question relative
Matt,
to
can I ask you a question on that? As we're going through the questions, has the property been surveyed, and how much space do we have along that property line? Is there a way that where you could do some buffering on your side of the property that maybe is not a fence, but to give some maybe landscaping or some screening or?
Yes, it has been surveyed. John was successful in purchasing the survey work that had been done or coming to an agreement with the survey work that had been done for a previous applicant on the property. That was a full boundary survey and topo that we have utilized in developing this. The existing spacing and proposed spacing is within 3 or 4 inches of each other for this west line, based on where the existing asphalt is today. There's also remnants of some asphalt back in this banked parking area where there was previous parking back in the day. So essentially we're maintaining that west property line again within a couple of inches to the existing fencing or to the existing parking lot from the property line. There is a relatively significant impact if we remove some of that parking to provide a landscaping buffer there, in that that parking then needs to be found elsewhere. And I know in previous applications, there was some parking pushed out towards the front. Again, our goal from an impact to the neighborhood standpoint, especially given the existing solid screening or the option for a fence to be installed by the applicant, I believe that any buffering or shifting of that parking would be a more significant impact to the neighborhood and to the project than putting the parking there and providing that additional green space out in the front. And again, I think that's an ongoing discussion item that we're happy to have with the board. Trash provisions, we are proposing a dumpster back in the south and west corner that would be accessed off of the drive aisle, either by front or rear loading. And all trash would be brought back to that enclosure. We do anticipate that a fire sprinkler system will be required. We know it will be in the new addition and believe that we'll be past any type of thresholds for the existing building. We'll be working with the fire marshal both on a sprinkler system as well as routing of emergency vehicles throughout the site. I know that there was a question relative to the turning movements. I have no doubt that turning movements through the main corridor of the site will be sufficient for fire trucks. We may have to clip that just a little bit. Getting it right up next to with a fire truck, we'll have to route that. And again, we will provide that to the fire marshal as part of the ongoing technical review. I touched on the trees, the playgrounds. I do not know the answer to the generator or the HVAC units. I don't know if John has had any thought or discussion relative to that. I know that there is mechanical space that's part of the existing brick wall enclosure here at the front. I'm not aware of any generator or HVAC requirements that would be anywhere other than potentially back in this green space or in that mechanical space, but I will let him speak to that. And then I think Jerry's going to take the horn as questions come up.
Matt, I have one question on the lighting. Do any of those lights have residential shields? And will that help the lighting at all?
They do not have residential shields, Ramsey. If we put residential shields on them, what that does is push the lights back closer to the residences and towards the perimeter, and then you put a shield on it to protect. So we've located them approximately 30 feet away, and again, at a 16-foot height with the downlighting, we don't anticipate that we would have any spill over towards that area.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay. If I can continue, just to talk a little bit about the application process, where we've been, where we're going. On this, the host has asked me to start my video, so I will go and do that. I think you'd rather see my picture still than see me live, but that's okay. We have met, as Matt indicated, with the Conservation Board. Conservation Board comments are in the staff report packet, the normally thorough staff report packet, which has gone to board members. One thing to note with regard to the Conservation Board was that they did have an opportunity to see our landscape plan and the proposed removal of trees, and there were no comments to retain any of the trees that are proposed for the reasons that Matt has set forth. I know that there was a flyer that went around the neighborhood that talked about the removal of trees, and I think some of the neighbors who have written letters to the town kind of took that to mean that the developer was going to strip the site of trees and vegetation to a large degree. But as Matt pointed out, we're trying to be very careful to maintain those trees of quality, to remove those trees which are diseased or problematic from a growth point of view. And of course, as we stated early and often, preserve the corner at Highland and Clover Street. As I stated earlier, John did walk the neighborhood, received enough input from the neighbors to proceed further. We did receive communication from two attorneys who are representing neighbors across one of whom represents neighbors across the street on Clover Street, and one who represents a group of neighbors which are varied, and we haven't really been able to pinpoint exactly who his clients are. But nonetheless, we scheduled a meeting with those neighbors at the church, probably I'd say a couple, 3 weeks ago now, to talk about the plans, to ascertain their input. As a result of that process, we are in communication with both groups. One's a little bit further along in their communication than the other, but we're hopeful to be able to address issues of concern. One deals with the parking spaces that are located in front of the building, is actually in the back of the building on the Highland Avenue frontage. Also a question with regard to the medical use and intensity of the medical use on the site. And we have committed previously to say that there won't be high impact medical, such as urgent care or anything of that sort. We're talking about initially offices for practitioners, and the use is still under discussion. The occupancy, the daycare, those are issues that we are still under discussion at this point, and may entail some massaging of the site plan that will be finally considered by this board. As you know, but for the benefit of the neighbors and those zooming in, this is a very early stage of the process, certainly with the planning board. The town does mandate us to visit with the planning board on a preliminary application. We know that there is more that we have to provide. We have to provide more in the way of traffic, certainly. But the heavy lifting, if you will, on a site plan would follow determination by the zoning board on the use variance and one area variance, which is located on the south end on the left end of the property, which is the south end of the property adjacent to John's house. Because this isn't a residential district, there is a limitation on the amount of impervious area between the building, not directly in the Highland Avenue frontage, but between the building and and our west property line. We would need we exceed that percentage right now. We would need a variance to have our plan as shown, but as you notice, adjacent to the residential areas where we plan to, at least in the initial stages, land bank our parking on the site. So our objective tonight clearly is to obtain as much input from the board. We know that the board will not be making any determinations with regard to this application this evening. Move on, hopefully continue our dialogue with the neighbors, and in the hope of trying to achieve some degree of consensus on some issues. But to move on as the next step in the normal town process is the Zoning Board of Appeals, which at this point is scheduled for the December 2nd meeting. And depending on results with the zoning board, come back to the planning board and continue the dialogue on site plan review. John, I don't know if you have anything that you wanted to add at this point.
Just a couple things, Jerry, if I'm unmuted. Matt, you threw something to me on the HVAC I didn't understand. Was that placement of the units you wanted me to elaborate on? Just before you, the assumption is that we have two big flat roof sections. They would house any of the HVAC and be screened up there. Should be nothing on the ground, nothing visible to the community. The variance Jerry spoke about, I think towards it's because we don't have sufficient green in the rear yard was a choice we made rather than try to push parking up into the front green areas, which we could accomplish and avoid that variance, I think. But again, working in and taking away from the front the beauty of the property. So that was a choice we made. I think there are other ways to do it. And because we felt the neighborhood was best served by leaving this entire front intact. And if anyone took any of the burden of that, it's up against my home. I just guess I'd like to say that I started by sending 140 letters out that explained what I wanted to do, why I was doing it. It was quite detailed. And that was sent to the immediate neighbors, all the people that touch the property, which included the folks at the country club across the street and the East Avenue, the towers, which were a great deal of those, plus all the members that, again, the neighbors that were adjoining the property directly. We held 2 meetings for those group. To anyone that wanted to come, listen to all comments, didn't get a whole lot of negative feedback by anyone. People said they liked the plan, but many people didn't take me up on the opportunity to come and speak to it. I then went in that letter, gave my cell phone number and my email and urged any of the neighbors, if they had any questions whatsoever, concerns, please to reach out. This was very early in the process. I then went door to door to the neighbors again that I didn't hear from that abutted the property. In particular, all of but the ones on Council Rock that butt up to the property, explained exactly what we were doing. And again, got reasonably good bill of health that this was something that they believed was their vision too. Was surprised again when the attorneys were hired and we held a second meeting, and I thank the attorneys who represented those groups for agreeing to meet with us, as Jerry said, about 3 weeks ago, to hear all their concerns. So we didn't try to hide anything through this, and I just want the board to understand, as we promised you, that we would make a good effort to try to communicate with especially the nearest neighbors. I believe in the project. I believe it's good for the area in Brighton. I said the only thing that I think is better or is good for me would be if we put some single family homes there. We've done such numbers on trying to see if that could work, and it just doesn't appear It would scare me in knowing that I would live through months and months of the demolition of that building, which would have to come down in a wrecking ball to accommodate any single family homes. But again, we just couldn't see it viable. And this looked to me and to the people I know around the neighborhood as a really good compromise and reuse of this building. So appreciate the input from the planning board. We'll address everything we possibly can and do everything we possibly can to assuage the neighbors' concerns. So thanks.
Thank you,
And
John.
with that, we'll close our presentation and be available to answer questions from the board.
Okay, thank you. I personally, we've seen this, we've made our comments, but, and I don't have any additional comments. Board members, do you have additional comments? Or questions?
I do not.
I'm all set.
I'm all set too.
No, this is John. I'm good.
Okay, thank you. This is a public hearing. Is of all of those who wish to speak to this, I'm going to let Jeff and Ramsey let you in one at a time. And please just give us your name and address, and please feel free to give us your comments or ask questions. Thank you. Who's up first, guys?
I'm letting Allison Bartlett speak.
Allison, hello.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Allison Bartlett. I'm from Harder, Seacrest, and Emory, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of our clients, John and Erica Stannett, Jonathan Friedberg, and Laura Calby.
Now, Allison, where do they live?
They live, so Jonathan's actually on the line as well, so I'll let him, I believe it's 2 Marvin Park and, sorry, I'm blanking on Jonathan's address right now. It's on Clover Street.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. Our clients are long-term residents of the properties adjacent to 1075 Clover Street property. That's the subject of tonight's preliminary site plan application. As detailed in our letter submitted to the board earlier today, our clients have serious concerns regarding the proposed redevelopment, which would convert the Baptist Temple site into an office park. Based on the current plans, we request that if the planning board is not willing to deny the application at this time, that it hold the public hearing open and withhold any approval unless or until the developer has received a use variance for the project. Our clients decided to move to their homes in large part due to the unique and special character of the neighborhood. The introduction of an office park undeniably alters the residential character of this neighborhood and will have negative impacts on those who have settled in the area in reliance on its continued residential nature. I'd like to address a few of our concerns that may be considered as part of the preliminary site plan review process. The factors include adequacy and arrangement of traffic access and circulation, protection of adjacent properties from noise, glare, unsightliness, or other objectionable features, and the overall impact on the neighborhood. So starting with the overall impact on the neighborhood, this is the most obvious factor implicated by the project. As you know, the proposed use will require a use variance, which, although not the subject of tonight's meeting, the very fact that a use variance will be required is directly indicative of the profound impact that the proposed commercial use will have on the existing character of the neighborhood, making it an appropriate factor for the planning board to consider during its review process. The project would significantly change the character of the neighborhood by greatly increasing the intensity and frequency of use. For example, when used regularly by Baptist Temple, the property was used predominantly over the weekend. If the property is converted to an office park, it will be used regularly Monday through Friday with weekend use as well. The intensity of use will also depend on the nature of businesses permitted by any use variance, and therefore, as a result, the extent of the impacts on the neighborhood are yet to be defined. So the planning board should not move forward with site plan review unless and until a use variance is granted for the project. Another factor considered during the review process is the adequacy and arrangement of traffic access and circulation. First, we question the developer's response in the short environmental assessment form indicating that the project will not result in a substantial increase in traffic above present levels. Because the project involves constructing a relatively large-scale office facility in a residential neighborhood, we believe that a traffic impact study should be completed. The trip generation assessment that was submitted as part of the application raises several concerns as well. First, the assessment offers limited projection data by only covering one peak morning and one peak evening hour, with no designation as to which hours were chosen and why. In addition, the trip generation data used for Clover Street and Highland Avenue are both several years old, with the data for Clover Street generated back in 2011. Therefore, it might not be indicative of the regular patterns over the past couple of years. The study also contemplates use of approximately 6,000 square feet of the property for medical office, which, if this is not limited to administrative or teleconsulting medical office use, this would greatly increase traffic trips and intensity of use throughout the day and not just during the peak hours. In addition to traffic and the overall impact to the neighborhood, the board is also required to consider protection of adjacent properties from noise, glare, unsightliness, or other objectionable features. With the introduction of office and commercial use, we anticipate that there will be increased light spillage from the property onto adjacent properties, which will extend later into the evening hours and on a regular basis. And I understand that this was discussed earlier in tonight's meeting, the mitigation efforts that are in place. The project will also include the construction of an additional 10,000 square feet of commercial leasing space, which will increase the existing building space on the property by about 30%. This will require additional parking to conform with town code requirements. And based on plans submitted to the board and looked at tonight, some of the new parking may be added in front of the existing church along the driveway entering the property from Clover Street. This parking would add additional noise, headlight, and safety issues on the portions of the property closest to and directly across from our clients' homes. The overall increase in parking also adds to the unsightly nature of the project in a residential neighborhood. We believe that there are likely to be a number of potentially significant impacts from the project. Consequently, the planning board should deny the preliminary site plan approval for the project based on the current plans. If not willing to deny the application at this time, the planning board should, at a minimum, hold the public hearing open and withhold any approvals unless or until the developer has received a use variance for this project. Thank you all for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Jeff, who's up next?
Jared Lusk.
Please give us your name.
Good evening. I guess that's a little bit beyond afternoon. It's Jared Lusk from Nixon Peabody. And we represent a group of concerned neighbors from various addresses surrounding the area, both across the street and around the corner and on adjacent streets that are, some of which are almost directly across the street from the project. At this point, I don't want to pile on to what Ms. Bartlett said. I think she did a nice job summarizing the concerns. We have been in consultation with Mr. Silvestri, and as Mr. Goldman said, we've been in consultation with he and Mr. August. I will say again, along with the generalized concerns and the specific concerns raised by Ms. Bartlett, I think we continue to hear the zero-sum game here that regarding the parking and the lighting, et cetera. The reason why we can't provide more landscaping buffer along the western edge is because we're doing so would require the parking to be moved into the grassy area out at the Clover and Highland intersection. I don't think that's fair. I think that the third alternative is to actually not have as much office space or office space at all, so that you wouldn't need to build parking to accommodate a 10,000 square foot addition and or office space in the meantime. I think the lighting, the same thing. I think the question was whether or not they're residential lighting. If we did that, we'd have to put it back near the parking lot up by the western boundary, instead of, again, eliminating the need for parking by reducing the amount of parking necessary and not having office complex use in a residential neighborhood. I realize the dynamic that we're in. As I explained it to my to my family tonight, it's a little bit like speaking to college age kids that are going to talk about the huge frat party they're going to have with the beer trucks and the band set up and the porta johns for a huge party, except you point out the fact that they're not old enough to drink. And so so in this case, we don't have the right to have this office here. We have a use variance that we know very well is very difficult to achieve. I know from from our clients and the letters that are referenced in the agenda that there are a fair number of concerned neighbors concerning this project. And yet we're again talking about parking and lighting on a project that's not yet permitted and is very concerning. As Ms. Bartlett indicated, we'd prefer at least that you leave the matter again open. Better yet, turn Mr. August back and say, why don't you come back and why don't you identify the uses that are actually permitted by the zoning board of appeals, if at all, beyond what are currently permitted in the zone. And then we'll be able to determine whether adequate parking, lighting, and traffic is appropriate for the approved use. We're now speaking about appropriate parking, lighting, landscaping, et cetera, for uses that aren't permitted. And it's a little shocking to sit on this end of the computer and watch this because it's so speculative in nature. But again, I appreciate the position and the policy of the town and hope that the board recognizes the concerns of the neighbors, many of which will be speaking after me.
You go back to your statement about a frat party. I didn't understand that.
No, it's just, again, you're talking about having, about all the uses and the office uses and the great parking and the lighting. But again, we're in a residential neighborhood where none of that would be permitted. And we're talking about all of the different operations when it's just not permitted. And it seems like I was trying to analogize to people planning a party that they're not allowed to have. And we're a little bit far down the path with that.
We're far down the path. Have your clients considered buying this building and doing something with it?
Mr. Price, the answer is yes, they have
Is-
considered
they
it.
have?
We weren't aware that it was for sale, most of them, and that's part of the issue with the use variance. And so again, I can't speak for all of my clients, but I know several of my clients would have liked the opportunity to bid on the project and potentially develop it in a manner that is consistent with the permitted zoning. But again, it was not publicly marketed. You asked that question. It was not publicly marketed. It's been a sealed bid process of which people have no access to information. And yet that's the basis for the use variance application before you. It's not been a transparent process by the church. It's not been a transparent process by the broker involved. And there are several of our clients that are commercial real estate investors and have been in commercial and residential real estate that had no idea that this was happening. That should be an indication to this board about the process. You asked the question.
Yes. Thank you very much for your response. Our next guest, please.
Okay, I'm gonna unmute Mary.
Hello, I'm Mary Jane Mann, and I am a neighbor. I live at 2409 East Avenue. Short statement here, folks. As a homeowner in this area, the commercial usage being proposed in a high-density residential area will forever negatively impact the character of the neighborhood. Not only will it be unsightly, but it will also financially impact the neighborhood. The value of the homes will decrease. I happen to know this because I'm a real estate broker. Please keep us in mind before you grant any requests. Thank you.
Thank you for participating. Thank you. Mary Jane, I do have one question. Have you been aware of the public meetings that this has been a part of?
I actually was at one of the public meetings.
Very good. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
If people could raise their hands in the Zoom so I can. unmute me. All right. Tom Friedberg.
Jeff,
Hi
I'm
there,
sorry. I can't hear who's speaking.
I'm Jonathan Friedberg.
Hello, Jonathan.
I'm here with my wife, Laura Calvi. We live at 1128 Clover Street, which is directly across the street. And in fact, if you're looking at this map, you could be standing on my roof because we're right at the corner of Georgian Court Road and Clover Street. So we'd be just to the left of that, right there. That's our property, correct. We've lived here for 14 years. For those of you who aren't familiar with this neighborhood, the homes, it's one of the least dense areas of Brighton. We have an acre of land in a house that was built over 100 years ago with a carriage house. We chose this neighborhood due in large part to the feel of the neighborhood and the fact that it wasn't a congested area at all. I'll also say that the introduction implied that over the last few years, there were issues with the church. Being a neighbor that's as close to the church and walking around with my dog every day, I can tell you that I disagree with that sentiment. The church has been a great neighbor for us. It's not a high density use, and the people coming through there are very cordial. I'm surprised that this has gone even as far as it has. The thought of taking this neighborhood and putting a commercial project in the middle of it is completely puzzling to me. This land is zoned for residential, and there's a reason for that, because this is a residential neighborhood. The fact that they're building all these extra parking spaces speaks to the fact there's going to be increased intensity of use in this area. Mr. August has been to some degree transparent with these plans, and I really thank them for the meeting that we had. Although every time I look at this project, I notice new things. The parking spaces directly across the street from my house are new parking spaces. And in fact, the parking lot that currently abuts his property has been moved to give him more of a distance from this project as compared to the way it is now. The trees that are cited as being sick and problematic certainly don't appear that way. If you walk through the property, they're lovely trees. And I just would say in similarity to our other neighbors, that this project is not the type of project that should go here. This should not be a commercial property. This is a residential neighborhood. It has a variance for the use of a church, nonprofit types of activities. I think there are other things that could go here. This should not be a commercial property, and we have major concerns regarding the parking across the street from us, the flow of traffic, the lack of specificity regarding the use. As a physician, I can say that any physician's office is a high density use. It requires additional parking places. There's an entrance now on the front of the building, which is not being used at all. And here it's being shown as being used, connected to those additional parking places. That completely changes the feel as to what we're looking at. And for those of you who live in Brighton, I would just say, imagine what you would think if they were putting a commercial property right across the street from your house in this neighborhood where all the homes are 100 years or more old.
Thank you, sir. Jeff, we have someone else?
Yep, 1 second. Okay.
Hello.
welcome. This is Luann. There's a seems to
Hello,
be-
can you hear? Hi, my name is Lou. Can you hear me?
You're kind
Hello?
of breaking up a little bit.
I'm breaking up.
Yeah.
How's it now?
Good.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Luann Alcester. I live at Country Club Condominiums, and I have great concerns regarding a zoning change from residential to commercial. A commercial area is out of character with our community. You know, it will lead to more people, traffic, safety issues, noise, and it may cause our property values to decrease. There's enough, these adequately serve our neighborhood, and the needs of our community do not require another commercial property. In addition, Highland Ave would become a major thoroughfare from the 590 exit. And as a resident, strongly opposed in any zoning change.
Luann, we're not hearing you. You done? I'm sorry.
Did you get any of that? Did you
believe
hear
so.
me?
Yes.
Yep, we did.
You heard everything I had to say?
You were in and out towards the end a little bit. That's why we were asking.
Okay. I basically the needs of our community do not require another commercial property. I think we're all in agreement in our area. Highland Ave would become a major thoroughfare from the 590 exit. And as a resident, I want to be in a residential zoning area, not in a commercial area. And that's why I bought where I bought. And so I strongly oppose a change in any zoning.
Okay. Thank
That's
you.
it.
We appreciate you participating. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Yep, there's
You see Jim?
coming.
Yep.
Jim, are you
I am?
there?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm Jim Phelan. I live at 2640 Highland Avenue. And that is directly across from the entrance exit of the proposed, of where the current exit is for that matter. So I guess my concern is the traffic pattern of how many cars would go in and out of there when this is fully up and running compared to, let's say, over the last couple of years. The headlights coming through there are going to go right in through my front window. So I pretty much agree with everybody else that's been speaking against this. But that's just one point I'd like to see more about is the traffic flow in and out, how many, and compared to the last couple of years. Thanks.
Thanks for participating, Jim. Appreciate it. And traffic is one of the things we'll be asking them to study a little bit further. Others interested in speaking?
Please raise your hand. I see one, and Ann Kelly.
Holly's on, and then I'll let Ann in. Go ahead, Holly.
Hi, I'm Holly Crawford. My family lives at 1166 Clover Street, which is diagonally across from the church. I just wanted to add my support to all my neighbors who have expressed concerns about the traffic flow, congestion, use of the property. We also bought, we've only been here for less than 5 years. But we also have a 100-year-old house in a park-like setting. And we have found that walking through the property, we take walks every day. The trees are absolutely beautiful. It's a quiet use right now. And the proposed usage, we do have concerns about the traffic, the additional congestion on Clover and Highland, taking down of the trees, and taking down the buffer of the noise and the lights. So I just want to add my concerns to those of my neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out. Appreciate it. Jeff, was there someone after Holly?
Yeah, there's an Ann Kelly.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Ann Kelly, and I live on Ambassador Drive. Obviously, I'm not going to be affected by these changes immediately because I don't front the property. However, I oppose the changes to the zoning because, like the previous speakers, this is a residential area. And I think there's plenty of places, other places in Brighton, to put in commercial space, but not in this lovely neighborhood that we all cherish. So I just wanted to go on just to say that I object to this too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Appreciate your input. Jeff, do you see anyone else? Ramsey?
Looking, Bill. I'm looking.
I don't see
Anyone
anybody
else?
else.
Raise your hand. Anyone else? So I would like to say that this matter is scheduled to be on the December 2nd zoning board meeting. It's is scheduled for December 2nd. So people may want to participate in that meeting for the use variance and the area variance. I just want to make everyone aware that there is additional public hearings that have been scheduled regarding this matter. I'm not seeing anyone, Bill.
Okay.
Jeff?
To everyone that participated, we appreciate you coming out and voicing your opinion. At this point, Ramsey, that's the end of our public hearings.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. What we do at this point is we go back to the beginning and we take action on each of the applications. Everybody is welcome to stay on and to listen to our deliberations. We actually encourage it. Ramsey, would you please call our minus of our first application?
Next application is 11P 0120, guys. It's the application of the Loyal Group REM for the demolition review and approval to demolish the building located at 1285 East Henrietta Road.
Okay, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Civiletti motion.
I'll second.
That's Delaney.
Delaney seconded.
Member Price,
Aye.
Civiletti,
Aye.
Delaney,
Aye.
Babcock Steiner,
Aye.
Wasowski.
Aye.
Thank you, John. The public hearing is closed.
Okay. So this is, you have demolition findings in the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
To adopt the demolition findings.
I'm sorry, adopt the demolition findings.
I will move that we adopt the demolition findings outlined in the planning board report, and the board approves application 11P0120 based on testimony given, plans submitted, and 10 conditions, and adopts the negative declaration proposed by town staff.
Second.
Was that Babcock Steiner?
Yep.
Yes. All right, we're moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Member
It's
Price,
been a long time to get this going,
Yeah.
so, yeah, you called my name? Aye.
Civiletti,
Aye.
Delaney,
Aye.
Babcock, Steiner,
Aye.
Wasowski,
Aye.
approved with conditions.
Thank you. Our next application, Ramsey.
Next application is the application of the University of Rochester owner for site plan modification to install a new backup generator on property located at 250 East River Road.
Laura, this is yours.
Okay. Can we, do we have a motion?
I'll move that we close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Delaney seconds to close the hearing.
Do we have any? I'm sorry, go ahead, Ramsey.
Sorry. Civiletti,
Aye.
Delaney,
Aye.
Babcock, Steiner,
Aye.
Wasowski.
Aye.
Hearing is closed.
All right, do we have a motion on this application?
Let's see. I'm trying to find my cheat sheet.
Starting on page 23 of 35.
23, 35. I move that the planning board adopts the negative declaration and that we approve the application based on the testimony given and the 13 conditions. Forget anything?
We have a motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Delaney seconds. Civiletti,
Aye.
Delaney,
Aye.
Babcock, Steiner,
Aye.
Wasowski.
Aye.
Approved with conditions. The next matter is the application of the Baptist Temple owner and Clover Park Properties LLC contract vendee for preliminary site plan approval to construct the existing church building into high-end office space and to construct a two-story, 10,000 square foot addition on property located at 1075 Clover Street.
Has Bill returned?
I'm here.
Okay.
Do we, I think if we table this, we're tabling the public hearing as well. I think you just, do we have a motion to table the application?
Hearing is kept open without a motion. Is there a motion to table the application? One thing that is in there is that there is a requirement or a request for this application to be coordinated pursuant to seeker with the other involved agencies.
And at this point, Ramsey, who do you see those being? Just county traffic?
Potentially, without looking into it more, it could be Monroe County and possibly New York State DOT.
Is Clover a state road or a county road? It looks like a county road.
Clover is, at that point, Clover is county. East Avenue, until we get a better idea of the trip generation, we'll see how far we have to go. But East Avenue State.
I see. So the intersection at,
Yeah, Clover and East, I believe, is state jurisdiction, but we'll know more when we reach out to them.
Very good.
They're the jurisdictional, they're the experts, so we do need to talk to them.
Okay. Was there a motion I didn't hear?
No.
I will move that we table application. Sorry,
9P NB 120.
9P NB 120, based on plans submitted, testimony given. 22 conditions and pending coordination under seeker with involved agencies, including Monroe County and New York State DOT.
I'll second.
For seconds. Member Osowski,
Aye.
Babcock Steiner,
Aye.
Delaney,
Aye.
Civiletti,
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
The application is tabled. We have one sign tonight. The other sign was tabled by the Architecture Review Board. Jeff, if you want to get that up.
Is it 91 or 92?
It is 1591. There we go. That was the resubmitted one, right, Jeff?
This
Yes.
is, yeah.
I'm sorry, Jeff, can you tell us where this is?
This is on Clover Street, or not Clover.
White spruce.
Oh, right, Spruce. Yeah. Okay.
You can see in the picture, they're holding up the sign.
Yeah.
The ARB suggested they make it a little bit bigger.
Yeah, I'd say
It's within code. So,
he wants it. They recommended approval?
yes, they, let me just double check if I could. Yeah, they, I would approve it as resubmitted because they came back with a larger sign, which is what you're seeing now. So I'd recommend approved as resubmitted.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Okay, ready? Wasowski,
Aye.
Babcock Steiner,
Aye.
Delaney,
Aye.
Civiletti,
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
I think that's everything for tonight, folks.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, thanks, everybody. Have a good Thanksgiving.
All
Yeah,
right.
everyone have a good Thanksgiving and most of all, be safe.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank
Yeah.
Too.
Same.
Thank you.
Wear your
Night,
masks.
Good night.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you,
for listening in.
everyone who participated. Thank you.
Everybody have a good Thanksgiving. Ramsey, Bill.
Yep, you too, David.
Thanks.
Yep.
Have a good one, guys.
Okay, Andrew, thank you. Jared, thank you.
Hi, Jared.
Mary Jane, everyone, good night.